The good old days. All right, so this is another recording of You Think You Can Doc, and today we have Brad Astor with us. We're going to walk down a little bit of a different path today. Again, my name is Alan Jagru. I'm a nephrologist. This is Ali Antar, who's a urologist, and we're going to walk through Brad and his life and how he got where he is and maybe why he made the right or wrong decision and what decisions we could all think about twice or three times before we end up where we end up. But, you know, it's a good day in Wisconsin. We've got some warm weather finally, and, you know, life is about to move on. I think, you know, a lot of us are seeing different stages of our lives, and we're going to kind of go through it all. So welcome, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks for volunteering to be our latest victim.
Quite welcome.
Brad, we're going to walk through kind of your life, but it's going to be, you know, a discussion of our lives as well, too. Right? This is not, you know, some structured thing. And it's really about getting to help these people who are in that situation of trying to figure out their lives. We're talking about the undergrads and, you know, the med students who are thinking about these kinds of careers and walk through it a bit. And, you know, a little bit of a spoiler, but just a heads up. Brad did not end up walking the path of myself or Ali, so it'll be good to see how it all pans out. Okay, and Brad at the current point is a PhD and is not working in clinical medicine, is part of the nephrology division as well as the School of Public Health. And for those who are kind of at that point of knowing this is really something that's kind of exploding, blossoming, we have a lot of clinicians who are coming into getting their masters or, you know, getting themselves involved in population health. And my guess is most people, definitely in high school, undergrad and medical school, don't really know what that is or why they should even consider it, right? And that's kind of where we want to go today. We want to say, like, where is it? So let's start, Brad. Let's get into, like, high school, right? Or before you even looking at undergrad, right? Like, did you even know what this was?
When I was a small boy,
yes,
doing renal disease epidemiology, as most young boys do. No, I had no idea.
Right.
So my mother attended a 2-year teacher's college and taught in a one-room schoolhouse for a while. My father did not have any further education after high school, went to the Air Force. So I didn't really have any grasp of, you know, academic medicine, certainly, or even higher education, really. In high school, I knew I was good at math and I liked science, but I also didn't really like being out front, sort of like doing stuff behind the scenes. So my image of a doctor was not what I wanted to do. Interacting with people all the time.
Was it mainly this big stage and, like, being that, you know?
I don't know if it was a big stage, but yeah, there was, the way I thought of it, there was, this may sound bad, but there was too much personal interaction.
It's not bad at all.
No, yeah. But this is the whole point. And I think there's this whole, like, big, so I was the quiet, shy kid, you know, people didn't speak ever. Forget about public speaking, like zero. Now people can't believe that was ever me, right? Because I talk way too much, right? And I can't even imagine, like, what really clicked. I mean, I can tell you what I think it was. I think it was flooding, right? Like, I had to talk so much. And like when I got here, actually, in the medical school and everything else, so many presentations. And I'm just sick of being nervous. I'm just tired of it. Like, I just can't do it anymore.
Big idea. I just got sick of it. I got sick of it because I was like you a little bit. I was just quiet, shy. You can ask everybody I grew up with, and that's everybody back in Florida. So it's a whole life away, it feels like. And so props to you for choosing into that and, like, not going against who you were. It's like, hey, I don't like being out in front of people. I'm going to find a place where I thrive away from personal interaction, right? And I may have overstated that a little bit. I don't know that I was shy. It's not that I didn't like people. Just, I'm not sure what that was. I mean, I got along with pretty much everybody. Yeah.
The jocks, the squares, the nerds, you know, whatever they were in the early 80s.
So you were well liked in high school.
I was fairly well liked by most people.
Gotcha.
Let's say I had a wide range of.
But you didn't really drum up the fame. You were like an influencer.
Yeah. I wasn't a star at anything. That was fine. Yes. And really, I didn't talk to anybody about this and say, you know, is my image of a clinician right? Yeah. And is that something I don't want to do? I just sort of had that picture in my mind. So again, I was good at math. I liked science. I was good at that. I wanted something in health, I guess, that kind of science. So I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Iowa, which was 45 minutes from my home, in biomedical engineering.
Brad, before you jump
Yeah.
into like, this is exactly why we're doing this, right? So I mentioned my wife a lot, but she's Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, didn't have anyone to talk to, figure out whatever it is, saw ER, ended up being an emergency physician. It's like, who would you have talked to, even if you wanted to? No one.
Internet didn't exist.
Right?
There weren't any forums or anything.
Right.
Like that,
But you could say the internet exists now, and there's all these. Okay, what? Where would you go?
ChatGPT is really
What are you
not
gonna
that
do?
reliable.
But I mean, like, where
What
would you
should I
go?
do with my
You're
life?
You're gonna, just hear about angry people. You go to YouTube, and they're gonna talk about some disease. Nobody's talking about what that life is like, if that's the right thing for you. So this is my hope, is that people get to hear your thought process, how you walk through this, how you ended up where you are. We obviously all made like kind of different decisions as we went,
Right.
but a large part of it is like, even all of these people who perceive themselves as, that's not me, I'm not that person, this, that, and the other, you change, and they don't even know what that person is, right? And if we can let them know to some degree what that, I was lucky. I always tell everybody, I had all these uncles and my fathers, so I got that exposure. I got to see what their lives were, but most people don't.
Yeah.
And that's what it really is. Yeah. So here you are, now you're going to Iowa, biochemistry?
Biomedical engineering.
That's right, biomedical engineering. It almost looks like it was like 2 degrees. There was a time period, or you separated it in the, I looked at your CV. It's like by dates, it looked like it was like separated. Was it a distinct change there, or did you go in with this concept?
Yes, I went to that school in that, signed up for that program and did each step, and 4 years later, I had a degree in biomedical engineering.
But why did you choose biomedical engineering?
Because I thought of it as, again, a good mix of science, health, and mathematics.
So you took the things that you liked / were good at,
right?
And you said, this major kind of fits the right stuff for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did a chemistry degree because my high school was this weird specialized high school that you could pick a degree from your sophomore year, and you had 3 hours a day of it. Yeah. So I did a chemistry degree because I had already done every chemistry that you could possibly think of. So now in college, chemistry was incredibly easy, and I actually made a lot of money tutoring and it was a breeze for me to go through because it was easy. I was like, oh, this is the way to go, right? Yeah. And I wasn't really sure where I was going with it. Ended up working as a chemist for a while, but but that's why I kind of went that route. So here you are, you've got a couple of angles and this thing. What are you picturing? Like, I'm going to do this because then I'm going to do that? Or is it like, I got to get through college. This makes sense as a major.
It was thinking back, way back. My thought process was, I can do this for 4 years. My older brother went to community college he went to college for 1 year, didn't work out, went to community college for 2 years, incredibly successful with an associate's degree. And he's way smarter than I am. But I stayed in school a lot longer.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was going to do getting out of this. I sort of pictured there are a bunch of medical device companies in Minneapolis, and there's a whole industry of joint replacement manufacturers in Indiana. At the time, it's because there was a titanium, not a mill. They extracted titanium or produced titanium there. So they use it for a lot of joint replacement devices.
That's in Indiana.
Yeah.
And so you thought maybe you saw an angle into these kind of medical industries with your degree.
Yeah, exactly.
That was your big play. Yeah.
That's sort of what I thought at the time.
Yeah.
So we toured around, went to some of those as a class. And then some of the students organized, and again, this is before the internet and stuff, and we didn't know who to talk to, but people had some leads on places that might be hiring. I remember we met in a classroom, and people would you were supposed to come with 2 or 3 potential employers, and they put it on the desk. And if you wanted to apply for that, you would put your resume on the seat. And I walked around this room, and I put my resume on several of the seats. And some weeks later, the Food and Drug Administration called me. And I did not remember that one being one of the desks that I put it on.
I'm thinking like, I'm going to give as many of my CVs out as possible. Or like, I only have X number of CVs.
No, I had plenty. I think there were 1 page at the time with sort of thicker cardstock that I was used to.
Nice. So it was quality paper?
Yeah.
I mean, you're thinking about things here already. Like most people today aren't even raised thinking about that. Like when I applied for residency, I applied to 70 programs.
Yeah.
Right? I got interviews at 10. Right? But I was talking to people before me and they're like, we could only apply to 5. I mean, they had to write physical. For me, it was click.
Right.
All right, ERAS, submit off to 75.
Yeah.
Here's a bill for $12,000.
These were a hard copy. And if I messed up typing.
That's right, a typewriter.
Every one of those?
That's right. You've got to load the paper in the typewriter.
My brother got me a typewriter, an old typewriter, as a graduation gift.
Yeah.
When I graduated residency, boy, I've never more appreciated writers from the 50s and 60s. Just to get a rough draft, they're like this. You know, now we get a rough draft. Hey, ChatGPT, you think you can like write me a script, right?
I don't mean to jump ahead, but I remember the house. So it must have been my last year of college, and one of my roommates and there's a recording of this somewhere from 1986, and we're just sitting around talking, and you can hear clicking in the background. I don't know how you feel about obscenities on the show, but click.
Oh,
click.
go right.
Shoot!
Yeah. No,
Oh boy!
and then there was whiteout.
Yeah.
Right.
So then you have to wait till it dries.
Right. But
Then
then,
you can
didn't they
type
start
back
making
over.
typewriters that the backspace would put white
Oh,
out?
there is this like whiteout
Right.
bar.
There was some. I heard. I don't know. I have like this weird fascination. There's a good documentary. Tom Hanks. Anyway, but back to the point. The FDA called you, right?
Yes.
You don't even remember having applied.
No.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What'd they say?
So they had a hiring freeze on for years that had just been lifted. So they were hiring a whole bunch of people, but they could only hire, and they were hiring biomedical engineers or biomechanical engineers, things like that. But the government said they could only hire from accredited programs. And at the time, biomedical engineering was not nearly as widespread. It was actually a very different field than it is now. I mean, now there's a lot of genetics, there's a lot of cellular work,
Because now they're trying to engineer an organism. They're not trying
Right.
to engineer, say, a machine.
Right. We were looking at much bigger picture. I don't know if this was in place when I was there or shortly after I left, but they started with like 3 different tracks of biomechanics, which would feed into the implants pretty well. There was bioelectrical things, which again was mostly medical machinery of types. And then what I focused on, they didn't have the tracks when I started, but it was mostly biological systems analysis. So one of the things we did in that with Edwin Dove, my favorite professor there, we would use these, pretty early computers and like simulate a body or a biological system. And then the next semester, we could make that body exercise. The vessels would get smaller and there would be some analytes that would increase and things. And you could watch the heartbeat and the blood pressure. And then the third semester, we could mess with those things and put in different inputs and simulate the...
So when we say early computers, you're talking like Macintosh? What are we talking like?
Commodore 64.
Because I'm imagining a graphical interface.
I did not have a personal computer yet.
So it was still like one of those computers the size of a room.
We had to go to the lab and do stuff. Yeah. And then then you could print to the library. And it had the big white and green paper with the holes going up each side.
That's the kind of computer that still ran on
You had
paper.
to-
Oh, yeah, with the 2
You had to
turning
go to the
things.
library and pick it up. Somebody was late turning their stuff in, so they would just grab the whole pile.
How long did it take you to learn to use that?
I don't know.
But you kind of integrated in with it pretty well. You feel like it wasn't an obstacle to your continuation in education.
Yeah.
I kind of feel
They
like
had a whole room of computers, and you'd have to go and do your work there.
You
But then your friends were doing the same thing. The one next
And
to
then I
you.
guess you kind of built a bond with these friends who were doing the same thing because you guys were all struggling with the same
Right.
struggle, but you were somehow winning because you were still using it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I kind of feel like, and this is probably similar to what you had, when computers kind of just came out, right? We were all like, okay, and you could write this super simple program, and look, the screen keeps saying the same thing over and over. But the reason I bring this up is everybody was at this level, and it was a very infantile level. Whatever you knew about computers, there was probably very few people who knew more than you. Now you walk in and there's people who are like experts in this and like really into this and way ahead of you and speak this language and that language. At that point, everybody like an 8th grader knew as much as like, anybody else in college or anything else because it was all like we were just getting into it. It's very simple MS-DOS and this idea. Like nobody really knew more than you.
There wasn't much simple about MS-DOS. I took a basic, I never used MS-DOS, like legit used it. I took a basic computer programming, like online course in high school. I was like, what is happening? because I was used to mice. I was used to like a graphical
Right.
interface.
And when you've never seen any of that,
Yeah.
it's different. Now, forget it. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be kind of hopeless. But so there's one kind of overarching thing here, right? And so you're going into these things and you're talking about, the FDA and biochemistry, and it sounds like all science. But there's this angle, at least I'm seeing or feeling, where you want to do or make things that help people.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know that I had that in my mind at the time.
So, people go into like, okay, I want to make this thing and it's related to health. And it could be like, oh, because health I get greater fame from this accomplishment of like helping people. People would look at that as positive versus, I don't know, I made some new kind of gun and, that might be looked at as differently you also couldn't get famous, I guess, as well. But it would just be different as far as like what you make. Like you chose inventing or making things, but in health.
I think just because it was interesting.
It was interesting to you.
Yeah.
So you kind of felt like a calling. Like, hey, this seems like kind of where I belong.
Not necessarily. I think it was just interesting.
Just interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I liked doing it. And I was good at stuff like that. So
Yeah.
That's always better when you can do it,
When you're good at something,
Exactly.
you want to keep doing more of it.
Yeah. And I was good enough at this. And it was interesting.
Yeah. Do you think it was interesting? This is challenging, or more so, hey, this is easy and this is really fun for me?
Oh, it was not easy.
Okay.
No, I worked hard at it. I did fairly well. I didn't fly through doing great. I did well enough. But yeah, it was interesting.
And along those lines, before I lose that, and I'll let you continue.
Yeah.
I have two brothers who I think are decently smarter than me, but never got out of college degree. The same way they just, and this is that effort kind of beats intelligence line here, where
hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That's right. There we go.
Yeah.
That kind of sums it up. And I think it's important to point that out because a lot of people, this person. If you want it and you work at it and you keep at it, you're probably going to end up ahead of that person.
Yeah.
And maybe because they had it easier, that doesn't really, get you in the marathon.
But it's far less fun to do things you're not good at.
Oh, that's, I think, sidebar related to all this. This is like half therapy for my residency. Like I'm still processing residency trauma.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you feel like you're not good at something, and so like I had up to that point just followed what was interesting and what I was good at, which was reading and grades in school. And so made it to medical school, and I was just like, wait a minute, what did I agree to become? I didn't know what a doctor was. I was like, I had somebody to talk to, but he was my dad. He was a pathologist. He never dealt with people. He was dealing with dead bodies, right? So he was like, just be a doctor. And I'm like, yep. And so there I was in residency, and finally I hit something that I just wasn't good at. Surgery. It's hard. It's hard to learn. And I could pull it off. And then I had this, you should ask my friends from college. Whenever I get back in touch with them, I always say things like, really, anybody could pull out a kidney. You have to try harder, right? And because I was telling, at that point, when I had come up with that idea, I was pushing myself. I said, I wanted to know what my limits were in radical nephrectomy as a resident. I was a fourth year senior resident. I said, I wonder how fast I can do this. Because to take out somebody's kidney used to be like, all right, you cut cracks open somebody's chest. I mean, they'd be in the hospital for 2 weeks. Now it's a laparoscopic thing. Go 1, 2, 3, boop, boop, boop. A small incision comes out. My mentor did it in like an hour. I was just like, I gotta be able to beat his radical. And I did it in 45 minutes. I was like, where did the county hospital, right? So who is letting 20-something-year-old me see how fast I can pull out a kidney in a cancer patient just to see how fast I can be, right? But that's one of the things about residency. When you actually look at it, at least my residency, when I look at it and I start looking at it objectively, I'm like, who signed me up for this? Like, hey, how's it going?
We're recording. I'm hoping the mics are working. I don't see why they wouldn't be. All the lights seem right.
Yeah.
We've kind of angled it. I hope we're kind of all in it.
Am I out? Am I way out? Yeah. I told Alan this would be as far back, and then every time I get into the conversation, I start doing this.
Getting into a good lean.
Yeah, I lean a lot, I think.
I tested the audio on the way in here between us. It was so good. Oh, I told you about it. Yeah, it was really good.
Okay, now I can see all of you and not just one eyeball.
At least you got one eyeball.
Am I out?
Gotcha. So back to the analytics, right? Because now you have this program, and you're able to manipulate the body. It's like a simulation. So you're like early chat GPT. Like, I think,
Sure. Fortran.
Yeah.
Whatever we use.
how did that ultimately? Still trying to connect the constellation between that point and nephrology epidemiology, right?
Oh, there's a long way.
Yeah, we're still
There's a lot in between there.
early
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess let's back on the track. So where did you go from there?
So I was hired by the Food and Drug Administration in the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, in the Office of Device Evaluation, in the Interventional Cardiology Devices branch.
Heck yeah. I'm
And
so glad you remember.
I still remember
I'm
all
so
the
glad. The title.
So, yes, I was hired to review device applications that manufacturers send into the FDA, and it was interventional cardiology. So, yeah, it was catheter-based technology. So I was there when the first stent from Johnson & Johnson came in,
Get out of town.
and it took over. I mean, just completely took over the division.
What was the chatter about it at the time? Like, what was the overwhelming feeling?
Oh, it was crazy. You're putting a chain link fence in somebody's vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was
It sounded like a
completely-
moonshot, but it worked.
It worked, and they made so much money and took over, and then everybody got on board, and more applications started coming in for these. I never reviewed the stents at all. Everybody else went to review stents, and I picked up all the
other stuff.
that was left over.
Smart.
Yeah.
So you didn't get caught in the wave of kind of just careless boom, right? You still were doing.
I don't know whose decision that was. That's how it worked out. But yeah, I remember the Washington Heart Center. So I lived in Rockville, Maryland, outside of DC. Yeah, and the Washington Heart Hospital Center would put on these interventional cardiology conferences, and this was before they had all the government regulations on handouts to clinicians. Exactly. They would rent out the big conference center in DC. And I remember one of them, like the exhibition floor, they had redone like the ellipse downtown DC. They had a reflecting pool. They had like a half-size Washington Monument on one side. They had the facade of the Capitol on the other side, on the other end of it. And around the back of that was the Johnson & Johnson hospitality suite.
Oh boy.
With these young women passing out shrimp and champagne.
Nice. All for
And
stents.
I was 45.
Around the technology. Said, you're going to put a barbed wire fence in somebody's vessel?
Yeah, chain link fence in their vessel. Yeah, so we lived high on that for a while.
Any standouts from the other stuff that weren't stents that like you did evaluate?
Eventually, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but eventually I was tagged as the expert to review transmyocardial revascularization, or TMR. So it's based on reptilian cardiovascular anatomy.
I don't know about that.
So instead of pumping the blood from the heart, going out and then feeding the coronary vasculature, some reptiles, especially really long-lived ones, actually have the oxygenated blood seep into the walls of the heart from the inside. So I guess to back up a little bit, there were a lot of stents and catheter-based things. I had done some work on laser angioplasty. So rather than using a balloon, they would use a laser to go through the stenosis or occlusion.
Well, so for my main job, I use lasers now to go through big prostates and go through kidney stones.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they started actually going into the ventricle and creating channels into the heart wall muscle
To revascularize.
to revascularize it.
Instead of opening up the coronaries, why don't you just get some other kind of flow?
Exactly.
Because that's how reptiles do it.
Exactly.
Why can't we do it? Moonshot.
I don't know what's happened to the technology.
I don't think that's around anymore. I don't hear about it very much.
I still have the T-shirt. TMR conference held in New York City.
I bet it was probably the last. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Maybe it's still around.
They had 2 or 3.
Okay.
But I lost track of it. I should really look up whatever happened
That's
to that.
wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Marvel
was
picked
weird.
it up and made Lizard Man.
Spider-Man's
I don't know what happened.
But it's actually, a brilliant concept. Like the whole concept of a coronary artery event. Well, if you don't have a coronary artery, you can't have an event.
Right.
If you've got perfusion in other ways, right?
Yeah.
The blood's already sitting there. It's oxygenated. Matter of fact, it's right there in the heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you need to take
Why
it
do you
through
need
a
to
vessel?
leave and then come back?
Just right here. We got little lacunae in your heart we've created with lasers. And so I can see the idea that it makes sense. Yeah. I guess they have other more effective therapists.
So this is like really just cool stuff. I mean, there's got to be a great pull, and I guess there's always this feeling, especially from whether you're in undergrad or any others, like, oh, you see, I don't know, CSI, you watch the show and there's this like cool thing, right? Then there's kind of the day to day. You can tell me if I'm wrong and it's different, right? But like I worked as a chemist, and it sounds like it was really cool. I worked like in Adderall development, which boomed as well, right?
Yeah.
But the day to day, it was really boring, really boring. Giant bags of amphetamines, and I was working in safes, and it was the same 4 people every day.
Yeah.
It was not fun, right? So here you are, you're with the FDA, you've got this stuff, and like there's cool stuff, but then there's the other 300 days of the year. That's what I'm getting at. And what was that like? Was it you?
Yeah, so it was mostly, unfortunately, it was mostly that. A lot of the applications we got were through the K route, which means they are substantially equivalent to a device that's already on the market. So you can't get that carried away if you're trying to prove that you're legally substantially equivalent. So a lot of the time we were like, we're not doing any of the experiments ourselves. We're reading about the manufacturers doing the experiments. And they had to do tensile strength tests on a catheter. And you have to do 20 of them. And we would look at how many failed and at what tensile strength. They had to do some other kinds of sort of scripted tests. And we would review that they did the scripted test correctly and they had adequate results with it. And then we would write that up. And that was one application. So most of those were not that exciting. And then I started doing the laser angioplasty ones. So those go through a more extensive review because they're not equivalent to anything. But I really didn't know much about lasers. So I started taking a few classes on lasers and electro-optics at Johns Hopkins.
Just casually. They were able to just like, hey, I want to take some classes.
And they actually paid for some. Yeah. And I took enough of them. I was halfway through a master's program. So I just kept going.
But that's where you had done your biomedical.
No, that was at Iowa.
Oh, that's right. It was at Iowa. But then you were already in Baltimore. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I was living in Maryland for that. Actually, a lot of the classes were at the applied physics lab. They would have night classes there. And most of the instructors and the examples in class were based on these huge, either NASA or DoD laser systems. They're talking about interplanetary communication. Yeah. And I'm talking about these little fiber optics. Yeah. You can put in your veins and go up into your heart.
200 micron fibers.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't really understand what I was doing, which was fine.
It's like cell phones before. It was like, these bigger is better. And no, tiny. It's amazing. Right?
But I was kind of bored with a lot of the things I was doing. So going to school was of interest to me to do something new. Yeah. But it was great. As I said, they had a hiring freeze and then, which was lifted. They hired all these people, but there were only half a dozen accredited programs. So all these young people out of college all showed up at the same time.
Nice.
Everybody knew a couple people because Tulane and Michigan State and Iowa, had programs. So there were more than one person from most of those places. So we immediately had a softball team. I played on 3 softball teams for a few summers. And then I started doing the night classes and things.
Yeah. Kind of the summer of your life, right? If you think about it. If you think about the seasons, we start out with spring, summer, fall, and then winter, right? And that's the summer. You're ramping up.
So I made a lot of friends.
Heck yeah. Well, then, is it at Hopkins that we're starting to see more of a transition now? You continued the master's program?
Yeah, so I finished that. And then they had the FDA, they had me reviewing some of the devices have to go through clinical trials to get FDA approval. So I started reviewing those. And I knew nothing about clinical trial design or the statistics they use for this. So again, I started taking a couple of classes. I went to the School of Public Health Summer Institute, and I did like a Epidemiology 101 all morning for 2 weeks, and I did Biostatistics 101 all afternoon for 2 weeks. And I said, "Oh, this is what I really like doing."
Yeah,
it was enough math and enough, epidemiology without the really dry part of the engineering that I was doing. So again, I took enough of those classes that I was halfway through a master's in public health. And they had a campus in Rockville, so I could do classes there. They had, so I could do like the 2-week thing in the summer and get classes done. They had a campus in Rockville, so I could do some night classes there. They had a campus in downtown DC. And then they also taught a few classes at the EPA. So I had a friend at the FDA that was also in a program. So once a week, we would drive to the EPA. Veronica and I would go down there, and I sort of had to wait for the classes to come around. So when I was mostly done with the Master's in Public Health, I just needed a few more classes. So I was taking like wastewater management and stuff just to fill out the credits.
Get it out.
Because that would show up close to me, and I didn't have to drive to Baltimore. But I found out I really liked that part better than the drier engineering, technical aspect. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you've stretched one catheter, you've stretched them all.
That's a good way.
But it's a big change, right? So where you had started was, I really liked this, whether it was electrical engineering or, all of these hard sciences, we'll call them. And now this kind of just opened up to you, or was it like, because now you're talking about like population, right? And looking, are we there yet? Or is that later on?
It really, it started with having to review the clinical trials. And I didn't know anything about it. And doing the statistics on that, I didn't know anything about that. But then I got there, and the epidemiology, the study design stuff really made a lot of sense to me. And
so you start exploring all the biases and how things
exactly,
and you're feeling like, wow, I see things differently now, or better than other people in the way they just accept things.
Yeah, so that made a lot of sense to me. And I don't remember the exact order, but I think I was done with the MPH, and I applied for a different job in CDRH, the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. They had an office of surveillance and biometrics. So I got a job over there, and that was mostly in post-market surveillance. So once these devices are on the market, some of the approvals have requirements for doing studies, or at least tracking adverse events with the device or device failures. So there are some systems set up to collect all that information. So we got to use those to study these device failures and things like that. And we also got to use like national databases that would track how many of these transmyocardial revascularization procedures were done, or things like that. How many of like TAVRs procedures were done? We could track those over time.
Think about those databases. One of the first projects I got put on when I was a fellow here by Dr. Nakata, the previous fellow had used like Medicare databases to look at rates of shockwave lithotripsy versus ureteroscopy. And so I got put on the continuation. Let's look at the rate of PCNLs. And I was just like, hold on, this isn't really adding up. There's no way this is representative of the whole country, because this is substantially less. But, there's any number of ways that you can read that away. But all that being said, all I remember from it in terms of the day-to-day was that my eyes were glazing over by about 30 minutes, because there was just too many numbers, so much data. I'm just like, who is making sense of this? Right? And I guess, is that one of those things that you have to work hard at in order to get good at? Or is it one of those they naturally kind of follow along on the lines of mathematics with you?
I don't know exactly. I do know that this stuff all came easier to me than the engineering had. It just made more sense.
So. And if you probably found that when you were in high school, you may have been doing that.
Sure. Yeah.
If you had been a wee boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the, the exposure for kids, and the more you see, the higher chances are you figure out your best sport or your best instrument or your best whatever.
A lot of it's timing too, because you're not going to be receptive to the same things at different stages in life. I mean, I've had teachers that I didn't really get much out of, and if I had later, it would have been entirely different. It has to match up with where the person is at the time.
I think that's true. The teacher has to match the student.
Yeah, and the student has to match the teacher. And the teacher this year, or the student this year, is very different than the student 3 years from now, or
very true.
3 years ago.
See, here's where it gets weird, right? Because in that sense, when I was a junior resident, I was a PGY2, they said that at PGY2 can't do robotics. But you know how fast it is to become PGY2, PGY3? It's one day. One day I'm a PGY2, the next day I'm a PGY3. The same person who the day before was like, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Next day he's like, all right, try it. And I'm like,
Before I got
feel
my
like-
hand slapped. Now it's like grab your hand.
But it's this other thing about like it's a very interesting topic to think on, because it's one of these things now. Even my job, like, okay, now I'm an attending and I'm supposed to teach surgery, and I'm like, nobody's really taught me anything about teaching. And now I have this interest in taking courses on teaching, right? And I think there are many courses. My wife actually does it. She's doing her master's in education psychology, and I talk to her about it now. So I'm getting these lessons kind of secondhand, because she is a teacher by trade. And so she learned about teaching. So it's a whole thing for her. And I'm like, how did I end up in this job now where I'm responsible for teaching?
It's something that we're all kind of cast into. It's not just teaching, right? So you get to a certain level. I'm teaching medical school classes. Never had a teaching class in my life, right? But now I'm teaching people at the highest level, or one of the higher levels, I should say, along those lines. But it's also leadership, right? And you end up having to lead things, but you don't do business classes or take leadership. You might take them later on. That happens certainly in the clinical realm. But then also, Brad's got may not admit to it, pretty high up role, where he is. So you end up leading and managing people, which who's prepared for that? Who wants to deal with conflict? But here you are, you were the person who's, self-described as, okay, well, yeah, I'm kind of, we're not going to say shy necessarily, but you're not looking for the main stage. And we've always pictured the leader, the manager as that main stager. And now you start to get people who are, and maybe I'm jumping too far ahead here pretty fast, but you're starting to have to work with people where you're above them. You're in charge. How did that go?
They didn't spend a lot of time covering people skills
Right.
in the engineering curriculum.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
I'll tell you what,
They could use it, but they didn't. No offense.
And you're kind of stuck with it. You have to do it to move on or be successful. You end up doing these things. And it's not something to be afraid of, but it's something that you'll learn. And if you're smart enough to not follow the mistakes that maybe we've made, you might start picking this stuff up on the way, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Like when you're choosing that diverse curriculum rather than the wastewater management, maybe you'll take something that's actually going to be useful in the future. That doesn't sound like it will be, because you heard it here. Who knows?
Yeah. You will find yourself in different situations. And some of them fit well and you want to learn about them, and some of them don't.
Yeah. I think even today, one of those things didn't fit well. Because for me, the picture that I'm starting to get, and this is some of my bias, I named my son Musa. It's Arabic for Moses. But the beginning of Moses' story in some tellings begins with him as a baby being thrown into the river in a basket. And when I look at your life and the story that you've told as the way you've told it today, I'm not trying to, I hope this is some way accurate, but it's a little bit like you're just in the river, right? And it takes its turns, but somehow in your basket, you're safe, and you ended up exactly where you needed to end up. And what a place. It's pretty amazing. Right? Because you weren't, in high school thinking one day you would be in the position you'd be in now, right? But it happened.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing.
It didn't happen immediately. Made a very circuitous route to get there.
And sometimes the best way to get there is that way, right? Because then you bring all of those things to the table, and you've had those experiences, and when people are talking about things, you can relate, kind of grasp. So now you're here, but before you were here, you were there. When I say there, I mean you're at Johns Hopkins. Are we jumping ahead?
Yes, a little bit. So I moved from the device review to the Office of Surveillance and Biometrics. I'd finished the MPH, and then I got accepted to the doctoral program in epidemiology at Hopkins. I was recently married, so I was going to keep working at the FDA. Lasted about a month and a half, because I was taking full-time classes. So I took a leave of absence from the FDA to do the full-time coursework that year, and then went back to the FDA half-time for the rest of the program. Yeah. And so I had applied, and like most of the stories, just opportunistic. I'd applied to the school. They gave it so I applied to the Department of Epidemiology. They gave it to somebody in the Welch Center for Prevention, Epidemiology, and Clinical Research. And again, my only background was in interventional cardiology. So they had just started a study on incident dialysis patients. So I got there and said, that's related to the heart. Sure, that'll be fine. And they had they had a predoctoral fellowship, a T32, for epidemiology and biostatistics. So I walked in the Welt Center the first day, going to see my advisor, very distinguished guy, Paul Welton, has written the hypertension guidelines and all this stuff. So I'm all excited to go see Paul Welton. His office is all boxed up. His secretary, Roseanne, just hands me a box, says, here, carry this. So I start moving stuff out to her car. Yes, Dr. Welton's leaving. You've been reassigned to this guy down the hall. So he was my advisor for all of 45 minutes. So they take me down to the hall to this guy, Joe Koresh, who's several years younger than me. I'd been out of school for 13 years or so at this point, something like that. Anyway, and they'd started the study on dialysis patients. Knowing a little bit about the coronary vasculature, I decided I would work on the vascular access because it had vascular.
It's all vessels.
Yeah. And it turns out the venous system is very different than the arterial system. But I did my dissertation on dialysis vascular access.
Whoa.
And I'm still working on that stuff now.
Weren't dreaming of that in high school.
No, did not know about that.
How would you quantify? This is just out of my curiosity, because now my job, whenever I hear these stories about vascular, venous, these kinds of devices, so much of what I'm doing now is the analog in the urinary tract, right? And I don't do open surgery. I leave very sparingly. All of my surgery now is through the urethra, all in a fluid system, right? So how would you quantify the main difference between arterial and venous accesses? And what was, did you have to like reframe your brain in order to start addressing some of the problems? Or?
Actually, I probably didn't know that much about the arterial system either. Reframing may not be but the complications were very different.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's very specific to vascular access.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, another thing about these devices and how fast they come up now is that, like, if they're substantially similar and how many of them have actually been tested and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This new device that I really like is the whole idea is that we're supposed to be clearing the kidney stones. Because now, what we used to do, we would break the kidney stone up, it'd be dust, and then we'd let them pee it out. But now we've got the device that'll suck it out. Who's looking at the complication rates on that? Right? I don't know, but like this device was, now I'm thinking about it. How long did it take for these devices to be approved in your time? Was it a long time?
I don't know. We had 90 days for
90 days
for a 510K. I don't know how long.
Yeah.
They'd been tested them.
Yeah. But yeah, no, when they clearly said turnaround fast, I mean, they're already in the second generation stuff. So
yeah,
now I'm just kind of, it's all just, well, yeah.
So at this point, are you feeling like, okay, I'm kind of finding myself here and moving forward, but there's also this, where do I exist, right? Do I exist in an academic world and as an educator? Maybe that's not, because here you're finding things you like, but it doesn't mean you like to teach it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing, right?
Yeah.
To say, hey, I want to teach this just because, you like it. And, we're still in Baltimore, or that area at least anyway. And so what happens next here?
So once I got involved at the Welt Center, it was a fantastic experience. I remember we had like a renal disease interest group. We had, journal clubs once a week. We had all these other presentations, and the faculty would come and listen to students or other faculty present stuff and sort of tear them apart in a really thoughtful and constructive way. And it was great. You could have like really interesting conversations about the study design or interpreting the statistical results, things like that. And I just loved that environment. And you had a group of 10 really smart people, really focused on one topic. Just loved it. So that was the teaching that I really benefited from and really liked.
Being in a room with people that were smarter, as smart. Around people that would lift you.
Exactly.
And lift each other up.
And they're not necessarily trying to teach you one thing, but just watching how they get to the core of the problem and how to think about those things.
Right. It sounds like an open-ended journal club, right? Essentially, you analyze somebody's stuff and kind of tear it apart or constructively criticize it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. Yeah, it's a lot more fun sometimes to criticize somebody else's work. Yeah. Have to come up with the perfect thing your own, and regardless of what restrictions you have, lack of resources.
But even, that's the idea behind tumor boards. It's the idea behind our stone clinic, right? It's the idea that, this is a complex patient. We're not going to solve it with just one doctor. We need to have as many smart minds as possible talking about the problem. I mean, even about tumor board, I remember, because my dad's a pathologist, and he would sit me down. A good tumor board, it's kind of like you described, where it's a dynamic, right? Like it's ideas being fed together, and then the idea grows like, all right, there's the plan. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Right. There's an excitement.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies, Oppenheimer. I think the Manhattan Project, regardless of the outcome of what they created, I mean, the Manhattan Project was just a large of that. Just get the smartest people you can, throw them in the
And
desert.
move them there.
Yeah.
You can't get out.
Yeah.
You can't even talk to people outside of it. I mean, yeah.
With their families, so they have no reason. And all they do is focus on the problem that they're focusing on.
Yeah.
Right. And that's I think one of the cool things about taking an academic job and falling into academics versus, you had that brief foray in Johnson & Johnson. That's why, I'm going to start entering that phrase. And I'm just looking for somebody to talk to about what does it look like actually working with these types of industries, And, but I think that's part of the draw to academics is you just like being surrounded by people with that same drive.
Yeah.
To get to the end of the problem, to solve something.
Yeah, it was a great environment. And some of the students that would come through, especially early on, were, because they're not saying, that's a great talk, but let's talk about this one. There's a problem on slide 3. Yeah. But it was all constructive and positive.
Yes.
And
nobody was trying to tear anybody else down.
Right.
Right. They were really trying to make sure that
working for a
every
goal.
brick was
Exactly.
made correctly.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a great experience, and that was my introduction to the kidney.
Yeah.
So
the kidney's the thing about a kidney for me now is like it's what I have to explain to most people now. And so I have this little diagram, but I draw it purely from plumbing on the outside. Like, hey, how do things get out? I don't truly have an understanding of the kidney the way that you guys do. And so every chance that you guys get to talking about kidney physiology, I'm always just like perked up all the way.
Oh yeah, I always start with the nephron.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the rest of it looks like.
I always start with the urethra. But it's all the same, right? And that's why I think it's good to have a surgeon and now somebody, a PhD, right? And that's the other person. You think you can doc. I mean, all three of us are different kinds of doctors, right? And it's like,
I know I can't doc. Like my daughter, she was younger. Yeah, my dad's a doctor, but not the kind that can help you.
To be honest, neither am I. I was on a plane on the way to Japan, and like, hey, is there a doctor on board? And I came, and the lady was like diaphoretic and sweating. I'm like, yeah, we should probably get my brother.
I'm very fortunate. Every time something comes up, my wife's an emergency physician, so there's very little that she can't respond to. Yeah. I just look the other way and cover the kid's eyes. That's my job.
So one of my residents the other day asked me, when you're taking down a priapism, you give phenylephrine. Somebody can get reflex bradycardia. And he goes, all right, so what do you do if it stays low? And I thought about it. I'm just like, are you in the ER? Yeah. And I thought this to myself. I didn't want to say it out loud. I was like, you should probably just go to the ER doc.
Yeah.
How rapid a response can you get?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you got some atropine? Slam it in. Literally, after I finished that conversation, I called my brother, and he goes, yeah, they should already have an IV. Just slam it in the IV. I was just like, keep that in your keep it in your pocket. I was like, right? So I'm supposed to be teaching Philip, and indirectly, he sort of taught me. And if you look at the original Latin doc, it's not caring for people, it's teaching. And so I think that's, for me, I like these sessions. My biggest goal and dream of it was to learn. And I actually just looked at the time. My wife needs me, and I've learned so much today. And I'm so thankful for the time. I really appreciate it. I know it's a natural ending, but you guys can keep going.
There's a couple more things I want to touch on. And
you guys got it. All right.
Yeah, see you later, Ali. It's the life of a surgeon and someone with how old? How many months?
8 months.
8 months.
My daughter's 7.
So I'm not worried about we edit the stuff and whatever, it cleans up in any which way. But I kind of want to get into some of your your current life and what that looks like, for people who might be interested in this world. But I don't want to skip too much as you kind of walk through it. So right now we're into population health.
Good cases?
We've switched jobs.
Dang,
what happened?
Yeah, so I finished I wasn't quite finished with the PhD. The dissertation was taking a while. I'd gone back to work half-time. The dissertation was taking a while to write up. And then they told me that if I got done with it, I could have a postdoc position. So, that's good. So I quit my job at the FDA, finished up the dissertation, and then did a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship, which was also great. A lot of the time was spent analyzing some big cohorts, and eventually all this got published in the chronic kidney disease definition and staging guidelines that came out from the NKF and was published in the American Journal of Kidney Disease. That really, for the first time, defined and staged chronic kidney disease. Most of my analyses were looking at comorbidities and other abnormalities that went along with the different stages of kidney disease. So that was really interesting and exciting for me that my statistical analyses from this would support clinical decisions.
Yeah. So now now you're involved in these making a difference, clinical decisions. You're also involved in a national guideline, right? Like,
right, exactly. Yeah.
This is like, hey, I'm in the background, but yet
exactly
out there.
Exactly.
Right?
I don't have to go in the patient's rooms, explain this to people, but my work is important and, could have an impact.
No, so I'm assuming that kind of success feeds into, it's almost an addiction. When you see it, this is, that reward center is getting hit here. And, it's not like, hey, every day I'm going to get one of these kinds of things, but is this what really pulls you in?
Yeah. I mean, it is that. And probably for me, just working with these really smart, dedicated people that I have a lot of respect for. Mm-hmm. It's mostly not letting them down. And again, you get a room of people like that and you just want to participate and everybody's moving towards this goal. And it's great to be a part of that and do your part to advance that goal, whatever it is.
Right. So you're thriving in the environment.
Kidneys, yeah.
You've got the feeling of belonging, you're thriving in the environment.
And a feeling of excellence because you're working with all these smart, dedicated people.
Right. And it starts with, okay, well, this is, maybe in this, I'm the expert in this building. Then I'm the expert in this city, in this state, now nationally. And then, obviously the next step is like international, but this is just growth of, wow, nobody knows more about this than me. It's this weird feeling, but it's empowering, in its own right.
Yeah. And actually the international thing, we had an international conference in London where we sort of presented all this, and there was buy-in on a lot of the concepts and the things that we'd come up with. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and I think fortunately in the United States, once you hit a stage here, it is already international because it's very, it's very different in this other country. Yeah. That might be better than, no one thinks that ever. Right. So it's like, you're already, people will at least listen to you.
Not yet. They don't.
Not yet. That's a whole nother day. So we're over there and, you've got other things going on, right? Cause you've got a family, right? Are you invisible? Is this like overwhelming you? Are you spending time with them?
So luckily my wife is an attorney and was gainfully employed at the time. But I do have a picture of my graduation holding a little baby that we just had. So yeah, there was a lot going on, but we made it work. Our daughter, so my wife would take our daughter downtown DC to daycare because she worked in DC. And then 9/11 happened and my wife couldn't get across town to get her from the daycare. And that was very traumatic. So my daughter never went back. We switched her to a new daycare center right near the medical campus at Hopkins. So I took her up there every day for years. We got very well acquainted. I got too well acquainted with Raffi, a kid's musician. But yeah, there was a lot going on. It was really interesting.
You're
flexible enough to
right. So you're
fit.
Two people who are operating obviously at a very high level, and juggling, baby. Right. Mm-hmm. And I did that with my wife as well. We were passing the baby in the hallways, different daycare, and eventually enticing nannies and all this. And it's really this chaos that I think it's important for, medical students, undergraduates, to not be afraid of. And a lot of people will say, well, they want to plan their lives and this, and there's no way you can just say, there's no way. Ask me right now. There's no way. No. I don't know how it happened. Somehow it happened. It all works out. And, I tell the undergrads and med students, I think, you're already a sub-selected group of people who will survive. I don't know how. I'm not going to tell you how, but it's going to happen. You will come out of this and you'll be proud of yourself for doing it. And saying that you don't know how you did that is an important thing because it means you pushed yourself, right? At some point to be able to look back and say, wow, I don't know how I did that, right? That's a good thing.
Exactly. I don't know how we did that.
Yeah.
But we did. I wouldn't want to do it right now at my age.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
back then it worked out fine.
And I'm glad it did. Yeah. Now we felt the same way. It was like, I don't know. It was like, and then this kid's sick and that one's, it was, we're moving around. And, fortunately, when I was in fellowship, my wife was in a fully practicing emergency physician. So I was like financially supported as well to get through that. And, it's these parallels. You figure it out as you go and somehow you make it work and you look back at it, you tell the stories and, you end up on this podcast now. But even beyond that, and maybe, again, I'm kind of jumping ahead, you do some other things, right? And I want to get into a little bit of like, were you playing music all along?
Off and on. So I played in high school, played a little bit in college, still with the band I had in high school called Mask with a QUE. So every once in a while I would go back to Cedar Rapids, where I grew up, from Iowa City, again, a little over half an hour, and would play some weekend gigs, but not a lot. And then I didn't really play much at all until, I don't know, our daughter was probably 5, and for some reason I went out and rented an upright bass. I remember she was about the size of a 5-year-old, because she thought it was hilarious. Way bigger than her.
Too big, yeah.
And she got in the bag, and I carried her around up and down the stairs while she just giggled in the bag. So I started playing that, and didn't really play with people. Started playing with a couple neighbors, but didn't really get out a whole lot until I came here. Until I left DC. Yeah, because because we still lived in Rockville, Maryland. So driving up to Baltimore every day, at least 45 minutes, often an hour and a quarter.
Assuming the traffic's
an hour and a half. Yeah. And my wife was still going downtown DC on the train. Didn't really have a lot of time for that, but that was part of the move to Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I'm glad it got back to you, kind of went full circle, and now you've been off and on through the years, at least that I've known you here, that you've been playing. So that's great that it's got back to you and you have that in your life. So now here in Wisconsin for the last 10 years ish? 14? Okay. Yeah, I know I was a little bit before you, but I wasn't sure how many. So 14 years you've been here, and you have your full professorship. You're in the School of Public Health. Are you teaching a lot of classes?
Not a lot. Still teach. Most of the classroom teaching is in the Department of Population Health Sciences, where I have a joint appointment. So I teach cardiovascular disease epidemiology there, which is a little misleading because we get into diabetes, obesity, and kidney disease, obviously, as well.
Yeah, everything's so intertwined and related. It's hard to separate them all anyway.
Yeah.
So you're teaching the classes, and you've got a lot of people that you're working with just on different research projects, whether they're physicians, fellows, residents, but also in public health you're also working with. So now you're a leader. Now you've got all these people. and that limelight, that even if you try to dodge it, will find you. Right?
Yeah. By far, my favorite part of that is working with the doctoral students, because I have them for several years, and we can really get into stuff, and you can really see the changes over time, and how they grow into things. And by the time they're 3 years into it, they've surpassed me by quite a bit, and that is the best part, is working with those students. And I'm incredibly lucky to work with the epidemiologist in pop health, and then I'll have a meeting with the transplant surgery team, and then we'll meet with the nephrologist, and they just know so much and are very generous with that time and knowledge. So,
and you may not appreciate this the way, from the angle that I see it from, but, we all look at it as we're lucky to be in the room with you. And I'm not just saying that. I mean it. We all look at it as like, wow, we're so lucky. We got Brad from, Johns Hopkins, and, your 200 plus papers, and not just papers, but, high impact quality. You've always had that desire and that focus on not just like, what can I get out there, but like, what can we do right the best we can? Obviously, there will always be limitations, but we see it as like, yeah, we get to be around you. We get to have you at our journal clubs to, make some sense out of the things we don't understand, because that's quite a bit, as you've seen, that we don't understand. But your way of simplifying things for us is important, because that's where the real talent is. Not how can you talk over people and confuse them. But and I didn't, I don't, and I've known you for many years, but I don't know you at the level of that full understanding of what I'm hearing now, which is, to me, the highest level of an educator is the person who's trying to get people to surpass them. And whether or not that's really true doesn't matter. It's the concept that you're willing to even walk that route, because most people are trying to hold back a little and still be the best, or still be seen as whatever, untouchable, where, you're looking to get these people wherever they can possibly go in the future and be happy for them. Just, it sounds really simple, but it's not common to find it.
I've been incredibly lucky with the students I have had, both at Hopkins and here, and they're all doing great. So
through that, you have your daughter is now gone to college, right?
She has.
And do you feel like this life, let's say the last 14 years that you've been here, has been a not overwhelmingly stressful, I guess, is what I'm getting at, or that you've had the time to do the things you enjoy, or do you feel like it's really been hard to juggle?
For me personally, moving to Wisconsin was the right thing to do at that time. Mm-hmm. So rather than spending a good 2.5 hours in the car every day, there are only, especially at the time, there were only so many podcasts. I could listen to the same story on NPR 3 times during the day, because they repeat themselves if you listen long enough. So having a 12-minute walk to work rather than an hour and 15-minute drive one way has made a huge difference. And you can also be anywhere in town in 20 minutes as opposed to an hour or more. Yeah, for me personally, that has given me a lot more time to play music and other things.
Did you have a feeling of, big fish, small pond, or was that kind of irrelevant for decision as far as coming to Madison versus Johns Hopkins, which is big pond, we'll say?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I do know I would not have wanted to do this any earlier, or I wouldn't have been. I think it'd be less likely to be successful had I done it earlier. I learned a lot of stuff there, and at some point I felt comfortable enough to step out of that and apply it with others that are not necessarily trained in that field. Yeah, any earlier than I moved, I don't think I would have been as successful.
Yeah, and you mentioned that before sometimes about teachers and the timing.
Yeah, the timing
is important, right? Yeah. So this was the timing that kind of fit better for you, right? And it seems like things have worked out well. We're both here. We're both happy, and we're in a good place.
The families are good, and that's great.
Well, unless there's something else that you want to talk about, I think we're kind of touched on a lot of things. And hopefully, people can kind of take some of this and figure out if it helps them.
Yeah.
That's kind of the big goal.
Happy to serve as an example in whichever way anybody wants to take it.
But this is what's important, right? Because people have these like, and if I don't do this and this timeline and this way, and just hearing of like successful people walking through the forest is really, I think, important for them, especially because all they watch is highlights and TikToks and this and the other. People like 14 years old and I'm a genius, or like, I don't know, whatever, they just all they see is highlights. It's like sports. You need to watch all those missed shots to understand what's really going on, not just all the, the 3-pointers or something.
Well, it certainly wasn't a direct route, but, I think being opportunistic and taking advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves, when you're in a place you can take advantage of them. It's all worked out well.
That's a good point. Would you say that you're a person that even if it didn't fit, you didn't say no?
In a way, I think I probably stayed at the FDA a little too long. Could have, moved on from that earlier, but I didn't know that. Don't think I really should have left Hopkins any earlier. I don't think I would have been prepared to be more on my own and not surrounded by mass of energy and smarts.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. There's no real answer to that. I'm just curious because there's some people who just like say yes to everything and maybe overdo it, and then there's other people who, unless it's the perfect fit, it's no, and that's probably an extreme on the other side. There's this balance in between.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just generally hesitant to change anything. The big changes I've made have worked out well. So
Good. Yeah, and sometimes it's all just perspective on it and what you do with it. For some people, all the changes will work out because they'll make them work out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure,
All right.
Brad.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen.
And Emma's really good at this. And anything you think or perceive, we'll show you this before we send it out. But we'll edit out, is what I'm getting at. If you're like, I don't really want that in there, just tell us. Yeah. It's really easy. All you have to do is delete words. The video's delete. It's set up that way. So it's pretty
cool.
It's pretty fun. But yeah, we've been doing these. I learn about myself doing it. People think about, I was thinking about this recently. I was just like, wow, because I was listening to one on the way here just to check the volume and this, that, and the other. And I was like, I don't know, but at some point, I think my kids would think about hearing the story of like who you are and what you went through.
I would love to have something like this from my dad.
Right? Could you imagine? That's what I'm like, wow, that would have been really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so indirectly, that's where it comes to.